Terrence Crawford goes on an interview, states that Errol Spence right now at this moment in time with the accolades that he has probably won't go to the Hall of Fame. You were talking about devaluing your opponents. Uh, what do you think about that comment?
Oh man.
Does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame with the accolades he has now? First of all, in your eye.
Um, I'm a big, big fan of Terrence Crawford's status in boxing. I get a lot of flack when I say he's the number one pound for pound fighter in the world and he's a Hall of Famer. And people always come at me and they say, damn man, he don't have no resume. And I'm like, bro, he's special. There's a writer here in Philadelphia by the name of George Hansen. And around 2011, 2012, we was talking. And this guy's a pretty knowledgeable guy about boxing. And he was saying to me that Adrian Broner, and it was another fighter, was the future and whatever. And I said, man, there's a guy named Terrence Crawford that's better than Broner and whoever else he was talking about. But let me just say Broner. Broner was the more popular guy at the time. And he hadn't heard of Terrence Crawford. Whenever he see me, he'll be like, damn, bro, you called that, man. My God.
Who Brona?
Yeah. No, I wasn't saying nothing bad about Broner. I was just saying, yo, it's another guy at those weights that's actually better than him. It's going to be way better than him. Watch and see. And it was Terrence Crawford. So he hadn't heard of Terrence Crawford like in 2011, 2012. So we having this conversation. He's like, damn, like you called that. I had seen like some video of Crawford and I had got cool with Red and Bomac. And I'm like, damn, this dude's the real deal. So fast forward, I always get a lot of flack for my high praise of Crawford's ability as a fighter. So you're right. I can't even deny it. Crawford did devalue his best win by saying Errol Spence is not a Hall of Famer. I'm not going to say I wish he didn't say it because he could say whatever he wants and that's his opinion. But it is kind of weird that I've always thought Crawford was a great fighter. I've always thought he was a Hall of Famer for the last few years. And obviously Errol Spence is his best win. And for him to come out and say that his best win is not a Hall of Famer, all of the people that give me shit about his resume, they like, I have friends call me up like, see, I told you overrating him. Even he say Earl is not that. And I'm like, damn, I guess I gotta keep my mouth shut because if he say it, he is devaluing his best win. Listen, Terrence Crawford is a smart guy. He's very successful. He made a lot of money. And he don't have to agree with me, but I just think that fighters should not put down their opponents because when they beat them, it lessens the accomplishment. But if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. Personally, I don't want to crown myself a historian, but I know a lot about the history of boxing. And Errol Spence has a very, very reasonable chance to get into the Hall of Fame. He unified 3 belts. He was champion for 6 years. He made it to top 4 or 5 pound for pound, which is an accomplishment. He has some very good wins over Kell Brook, Mikey Garcia, Danny Garcia, and Sean Porter. He's an Olympian, and he only lost to one fighter, which was a great, great, great fighter. I don't know if he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, like as soon as he gets on the ballot, like the Mayweather, Pacquiao, those kind of guys. But he has a reasonable shot to get in. If you look at the best welterweights over the last 40 years, he's somewhere in the middle of the pack. Like I could go back with guys that you may not have heard of. So let's start like in 1980 with guys like Carlos Palomino, Pepino Cuevas. I'm going in chronological order. Roberto Duran, Ofer Benitez, Tommy Hearns. These are all guys that went to the Hall of Fame that fought at 147 and had some big wins at 47. Donald Curry, um, Buddy McGirt, Parnell Whitaker. Your TV went out.
Oh yeah, yeah. I can hear you still. Someone was just
Okay.
calling me.
Okay. Buddy McGirt, Parnell Whitaker, Felix Trinidad, Oscar De La Hoya, Miguel Cotto, um, Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, Tim Bradley. Those are like the big names of guys who went to the Hall of Fame that fought at 47 since like 1980. Then you got a couple of guys that's on the outside looking in, like Melchick Taylor, Simon Brown, Marlon Starling, Ike Corte, and Vernon Forrest, right? So Earl Spence is better than Pepino Cuevas and Carlos Palomino. He's at least even with a guy like Tim Bradley and Donald Curry. Um, Somebody may say, well, Ike Corte did a little more than him, maybe a little better, had more title defenses. That's close. Marlon Starling and Simon Brown are equal to him in fighters. That's subjective. Vernon Forrest got the big Shane Mosley win. Shane Mosley's another guy who went to the Hall of Fame at 47. So, and then you could come back and say, Earl has a reasonable shot to get in there. Tim Bradley got in there. They're about even as fighters. Sean Porter is on the ballot. Earl beat him head to head. Sean Porter made the ballot. So Earl has a reasonable case to go into the Hall of Fame. Does he go in like a Leonard, Hearns, Mayweather, Pacquiao? No, he goes in a notch below them in terms of how fast he goes in, but it's not out of the question for him to be a Hall of Famer if you analyze everything in his objective with what he's done. So I think he should definitely be on the ballot, and I think he has a reasonable chance to get in. But maybe Crawford don't look at the history of boxing the way I do. I got a lot of knowledge about the history of boxing, so I look at it a little bit differently. So I think he has a reasonable shot without, saying, "Oh my God, he's a definite Hall of Famer," or saying, "No, he's not a Hall of Famer." I think he has a very reasonable shot. And listen, I don't mean this to be offensive towards anybody, but Vinny Pazienza just got voted in the Hall of Fame by the same voters that could vote Earl Spence in. So if they could justify putting Vinny Pazienza in the Hall of Fame, they could certainly justify putting Earl Spence in the Hall of Fame. Because Vinny Pazienza never made a top 5 pound for pound list, and he never unified any titles, and Earl Spence was a much better fighter. That's just the facts. So the same guys that's voting for the Hall of Fame could put him in there as reasonable for Earl Spence to be in there. And that's just